training to the caucus chairs. We have a few concerns. Several of us ran into what I kind of call the fake training, where there were other organizations that were doing training that would be appropriate for attendees. But as leaders, you know, especially because of how close it got to Christmas time, and especially if you're doing it in a school like I was, you really want to be able to get the training before school shuts down, and you can't.
Excuse me, Jim, are you talking about other organizations besides the party doing training?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so yeah, basically, when that training happened, I had about 2 or 3 other things I could have been doing that night. Went to the training thinking I'd get the necessary leader training, and in the end I felt kind of frustrated. It wouldn't be great.
This was Republican Party training or another organization?
The other organization.
Okay. I just want to
Party
understand.
training was good. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
But by the time I made it to that, which was the next week, and I hoped it was going to be the right thing, that was a little lower on my priority list because I knew that there was a chance it might not be the right thing, you know. And I had a little bit of a conflict. Now this was second priority, so I showed up about 10 minutes late, and then when I got the training, I was like, this is good, which I had those extra 10 minutes. But, and as close as 2 nights before the caucus, I actually know somebody who, you know, they made that extra effort to go to the non-party training, thinking it was the leadership training, and, you know, it's like, what was that? And I said, did you get that sheet of paper, that, you know, double-sided sheet of paper? It's like, no? Yeah, you went to the wrong training. So 2 nights before, they realized they had very little time to get that good training. I know somebody who, again, if it was a little further away from Christmas, somebody who caucused several times before that showed up 2 minutes late. Just the way we communicated it to people, rather than them realizing, hey, there's a lockdown at 7 o'clock, they thought, okay, show up at 7 and we'll start sometime after. So if they ended up angry, they might even leave the party, although I'm sure they'll generally vote our way. But so we should be careful on how we communicate things, although I do see on the agenda you are looking at late arrivals for other reasons too. Yeah, as long as we try to be first in the nation, at least in presidential years, I'd say we should probably expect it to be January or maybe earlier. So obviously get all training done before that. Although the training was good for the leaders, I also know somebody who served as one of the caucus secretaries, and she was used to secretaries of any other group just taking meeting minutes. So she started out by trying to take minutes of what was going on, and very quickly realized she'd have to just focus on the forms, and it's like all you had to do was the forms. I know that wasn't the secretary of my other patients. But yeah, it'd be good if we can communicate properly to each of the roles involved. You know, people checking in know what they should be doing, the chair should know what they're doing, and even attendees, but you know, they shouldn't necessarily have to hear from the person leading it what happens at district convention or the, if you want to be on organization committee or content committee. It'd be nice if they have that information as well in some way, although the leader should know.
Yeah, points well taken, Jim. What is your precinct?
My current precinct is Cedar Rapids 19.
Which one did you chair?
At that time, it would be Cedar Rapids 16.
Okay. Yeah, I did have a question on training, and you talked about other organizations. There's some other organizations that do some pretty good training.
Yeah.
Also, what would you think if the party joined forces with other organizations to provide training, like-minded organizations? Does that make sense or not in your mind as a local leader?
Yeah, it can make sense as long as there isn't a bias for or against the
Right.
candidate.
Right.
Which, since this was a special interest
Okay.
group, there was that, which I didn't like. And obviously, if it's very clear up front, this is for caucus leaders or the chairs or whatever, there's a difference between attending a the caucus, obviously, and running your own. And it's very clear what kind of training it is. You know, if I would see the word leader or chair, that kind of thing in there, I don't care who does it as long as it's good.
Right.
And if it's clearly, hey, this is the candidate's doing this, or the PAC is doing it, or something, I would hope not to see the word leader unless it happens to be part of their name, and that's confusing. Obviously. I know some people, I know most people are there for the presidential preference poll, and over half the room vacates once the results come in. I know some people that say, hey, this is an add-on thing, we may consider just doing our party business first, and run along. I don't know if I have a preference either way, but I've heard it both ways.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say that's about all that I know. It's just like a few things.
Jim, thank you for those points. They're well taken. Do other members have questions or comments for Jim?
Yeah, Jim, David Chung. Especially appreciate what you said about the caucus secretary training. That a lot of our focus has been on the person who runs the caucus, and the caucus secretary shows up and helps that person. And you're right, it's a different job than being secretary for other organizations. So that's key. Also, you noted that later on in the agenda, we do have a specific recommendation, preliminary recommendation, about late arrivals. We really want to be inclusive and not turn people away unless there's absolutely a good reason for it. So,
right.
Appreciate
in my case, it was convenient. There's a clean break right around 7 o'clock. Line suddenly dwindled, and it was perfect.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim, and thanks for your good work in Cedar Rapids. Yep. Further comments? Jim, yes.
So I can give these to you later. I'm going to blast through some reviews when we found out you guys were coming here. Thank you to the Gazette for that.
Yes. You have something in writing to present a little later too, did you say?
I can give you these bullets.
Okay, yes, if you would present it to our secretary when you have a chance later
The
on.
reason I want to go through them fast is I would rather you guys start asking comments.
That'd be great. Thank you, Jim.
So the first point, point 2, is your survey was 669 party activists. As long as you send me 170 of those people, I don't mind you getting their opinions. I don't care about party activists. The poor people in the trenches were the ones that needed the training. Personally put on 34 training sessions. Smallest group was 2 people. Largest group was over 40. Every one of them wanted to know about the entire process. That means all the way to national convention. The most disheartening thing I had to tell those people is, well, I can promise you get to go to state, but we still haven't published the official way people get to that national convention. The best training material I found was the Democrats' material, and I took that and plagiarized much of it. They focus on the following. Caucus night is money, building, and preference polls. That's it. They don't necessarily put them in that order, but the leaders and the secretaries better understand that it's about the money and it's about the party building, that a preference poll is not binding. I actually had a lady cry at my training saying, well, then why do I bother going to it if this vote doesn't count? So although we do a great advertising and getting those people out there, there are actually 3 offices that I recommend you start training for: leadership secretary and a sergeant at arms. The reason you need to start training for that is several of our caucus locations were 200 to 300 large. As far as showing up late, that should still remain in the control of each precinct's group. In my opinion, we told the chairs as they were learning, look at the line. If it's a long line, have the sergeant at arms stand at the end and see what'll dwindle in. And if more people show up, just turn to the body and say, we're supposed to start at 7 o'clock, but we just had 20 people walk in. What say you to the body?
Yes.
Now, the body says, no, go away. Well, those 20 people can look at 200 and see that they might need to show up early.
Did you have a hard time and a hard
No,
deadline?
the training was
Yeah.
awesome. The
Yeah.
worst precincts we had were the precincts where leaders were, we'll just say, a little assertive. You know, it wasn't me. The late shows were not a problem. For most of it, we did have one where we had 2 locations, And because the location kept sending them to the wrong precinct, it was the same building, some people got locked out, not because they showed up late, but because they showed up after the vote.
Yeah.
And they didn't care about the rest of it. The vote had already been called in. And so they felt cheated, they felt locked out, not because anybody told them they couldn't, but the vote was done. By the way, Lynn County was third in the state for reporting its total numbers. The only counties that beat us, I believe, had less than 100 people. When you talk about starting your planning early, I would tell you that Lynn County has already put in place a caucus planning team that is going to start 1 year out. And their number one job is location, 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 all 86 of them. Give the volunteers a list out there of people that can help them. The training that I've seen come from RPI scared the hell out of me. You send lawyers and they start reading the law. That's scary. What I tell people right away is don't worry about it. There's been hundreds of people that have screwed this up. Now that you guys have a national catastrophe, oh my God, we can't count 50 votes. You know how hard it's going to be to get volunteers next time? Because we allowed the news media to make us look stupid. Now how many times am I going to get 86 leaders? Make this simple. It's about party building. You guys got to focus that on the training and take the laws and give them to the lawyers. Make sure you have one list of volunteers. We ended up with 5 or 6. That's scary. The office was not only so important that we secure it, but we made it a #1 priority for several of us. Because the Democrats, if you guys don't know it already, here in Lynn County, start their training for caucus 8 months ahead of time, 20 people at a time, at coffee shops, and they have over 100 trainers in this county. Maybe we should learn with them and start doing our own. This county is big, but it has the same problems as all the small counties, and that is to build people's confidence up. Leadership training doesn't need to wait for caucuses. I got a canned program. I'm ready to go anywhere and make people comfortable. Set the date. That has come over and over and over. Now, setting that date aside for just 1 second, set 10 dates. I don't care. Set several dates so that people can start planning for the locations. And you know what? If Florida goes ahead of us, so what? The people will have a better experience. Remember, the only reason we're a straw poll is because we wanted to go ahead of Massachusetts, and they were the only ones that had a binding primary. We didn't have a binding primary so that we could get ahead of them. Keep the focus on why we got there. Volunteers can't be held accountable. I had people so worried that they would recount their ballots. And then I had you guys ask me to give you the ballots. So you can recount them? Once they fill out Form E, it's done. They're putting their names on it. Form E is done. You can count Form Es all you want, but don't insult the people that wrote those numbers down. Most of them were representing their candidates. Why don't we have an after-action report? Out of all the forms you gave us, there was 5 of them. You need to add a form for county members. So who's going to be part of the Lynn County? Give them a way to fill it out. Who is going to help with the county convention? And then the last list, fill out an after-action report. Every precinct in this state should say, I had a horrible process and Jim Conklin made my night miserable.